Today we will be chatting with Molly Carpenter about the importance of early detection. Each month, Home Instead Senior Care is the proud sponsor of our live chats. Home Instead is your trusted in-home care agency, helping you keep your aging loved ones in their home as they grow older. Before we get started with our chat, there are a few reminders that I want to point out. We have muted all of your telephone and computer lines to keep the background noise to a minimum. We know you're busy, so feel free to listen along as you go about your day. You can enter your questions at any time by typing them into the questions section of your screen. And finally, we are recording today's chat, and we will send you an email with a link to the recording as well as information on the resources we discussed today. So if you miss any part of the chat or if you want to share it with family or friends, you're able to do that. Now let me introduce you to the voices you'll be hearing this afternoon. I'm your host, Kat Kaler. I'm the social media advocate here at Home Instead Senior Care. I have the pleasure of bringing you the most current information, resources, and hopefully a little inspiration each day on Twitter as well as on our Facebook page. And joining me for today's chat is my friend and colleague, Molly Carpenter. Molly is an author, speaker, trainer, and family caregiver. In her current role, Molly works with a team responsible for ensuring that the Home Instead Senior Care networks of nearly 65,000 caregivers worldwide have the resources they need to effectively provide quality care in the home and understand the importance of their work enhancing the lives of those they serve. Molly, welcome back to our live chat.
Thanks, Kat. It's so good to be here this afternoon, and welcome everybody who's joined us on the call today.
So, Molly, today we are discussing the importance of early detection. And it was, somebody had brought up the other day to me, what's the use of, getting a diagnosis as early as you can? What is that going to do? Just buy you more time of misery? So I think there really is a need maybe for the information of why detection or diagnosis as early as possible is important and what that allows you as an individual who may receive the diagnosis or your family to do. So can you give us some insight?
Yes, I hear that all the time as well. It's why do I want to know if I have Alzheimer's or dementia? Why would I want to know that? Because it's such a terrible disease and bad things happen and I won't remember things, and it's negative. It doesn't feel good and it's very scary. That's the thing about Alzheimer's disease, because it's so uncertain that it's very scary. But we have to think about this in a different light and a lot more positively, because a lot of times when people start having memory loss and memory issues, those could be signs of other things. It doesn't always necessarily mean that it's Alzheimer's disease or dementia. So really, one of the biggest benefits of getting diagnosed or getting an assessment at least is to really understand where is this memory loss coming from. We have found that in cases, it can be whatever is causing it can be very treatable and curable, and it could be a side effect of something else. So number one, you've really got to understand what it is so you know what you're dealing with and moving forward with. But the other big thing about getting diagnosed and getting, some information earlier than later is it really allows for plenty of time for not only the person with dementia and Alzheimer's, but the family to plan appropriately for the future. And I know, planning is one of those things. I think a lot of us think, oh, I've got everything figured out. I know what my will, I know all those things.
Sure.
But this is another one of those opportunities that we really have to be, very concerned about what our final wishes are, and do we have all of our paperwork, and do we know who's going to make medical decisions. It really is an opportunity to get all of that plan in place. So when you get this diagnosis, or you get detected early, you can really be proactive and plan out the rest of your time and still have a very meaningful life.
And Molly, let me ask you a question on that. I know, a lot of us, may have already said, this is my plan. This is what I want to happen. But is it true that, with a diagnosis of something like Alzheimer's or another kind of dementia, that could be a game changer? There may be different plans that need to go into place.
Absolutely. It absolutely could, because when you think about Alzheimer's or dementia, yes, you're right. You have your plans in place, but do other people know your plans? And there will come a time where you won't be able to communicate your plans, or you won't be able to, let everybody know what your plans are. And so you need to point somebody that knows what your plan is and that can help you carry out what you want your life to be like in the last years of your life. So it's really important that you get other people involved when it comes to Alzheimer's disease, because of the cognitive issues that come along with it.
Now, I want to talk some more about why this is so important, but I also want to make sure that we're getting to some questions. But before we jump to questions, just in case anybody needs to leave us early, how do I go about getting an assessment? If I think, wow, maybe there might be something wrong with myself, or maybe with a loved one, what do I do?
Well, the first thing, what I tell people and families to do all the time, is to really understand what the signs are for a significant memory loss, or for even for Alzheimer's or dementia. And the Alzheimer's Association has great resources, and they're called the 10 signs. And so even if you just type in the 10 signs of Alzheimer's disease into Google, you can get that information. But after that, to really go about getting an assessment, there's a couple of ways. And number one, when somebody is on Medicare, they get an annual Medicare wellness visit every single year. It's like a yearly physical. And this part, they've added the piece about cognitive assessments. So now when you go in to get this test, this annual visit that you're used to getting every year, they've added this on where you can get a cognitive assessment. And it's on the list. The doctor knows that that's something that's provided. It's free. And it's an objective, you ask for an objective assessment so that the doctor can conduct and ask you some questions to determine how things are going as far as memory and cognition. Now, after that, if there is anything detected or the score isn't where it should be, then you would go to your doctor or a geriatrician and get a full workup. But this is a great way to start, and it's also a great way to get a baseline so that moving forward, okay, this is when I was 60, this is what my score was, and now I'm 70, and here's what my score was. So that we can really every year determine if things are still in the same place that they were the year before. Now,
great. So maybe if I was just thinking maybe if that concern isn't there yet, but maybe I have a family history, or I'm maybe worried what the future looks like, getting that baseline is an important step.
Very important step. That's exactly right. If a family, though, right now, today is suspecting something or having symptoms, or their family members having symptoms, then it's absolutely probably time to go see the doctor and to go get a workup and get an assessment done pretty quickly. Because, again, as we said earlier, it's more important to rule out everything, which is kind of what they do. They start and they rule everything out. And because you just want to know what you're dealing with. It might just be something different. It might not be Alzheimer's disease. So talking to the doctor, telling them you want to get objective assessment for cognition or for cognitive deficit, then that is exactly what to do. And from there, you'll go from there. They might recommend you go see a specialist, like I said, a geriatrician or maybe a neurologist. But the first step, again, knowing the signs and then visiting with the doctor, either at the annual wellness visit or just at your next checkup, or making a special appointment. Yeah.
Absolutely. Always, if you're worried, always call the doctor. They will let you know what to do.
Yep.
Now,
exactly.
If you're just joining us, we are chatting with Molly Carpenter. We are discussing the importance of early detection and why that's important. And we're also taking your questions. So Molly, I want to jump into a question that we received from Georgia. And Georgia's on the chat with us today, so thank you for joining us. Georgia wants to know, it looks, what do you do, what happens, or what can I do if a client becomes violent? So Georgia, it sounds like you're a professional caregiver, so thank you so much for joining us today. Molly, what are some tips for aggressive or violent behavior?
Okay, and that's a great question, Georgia. Thanks for writing in to us. First and foremost, when somebody is becoming violent, you really need to make sure you're safe, and you really need to take steps to become safe if you're not. So leaving the room, making a phone call, getting some extra help, whatever that is, that's always my first bit of advice. But I think another thing to consider is when we think about violent behavior, and I know, Georgia, you didn't give a lot of detail about violent, but any kind of difficult or violent behavior, we call this a behavioral symptom. So it's a symptom of the disease, and it's a behavioral symptom, which means it's something pretty scary. It could be anger, it could be yelling, it could be pushing, it could be any of those things. And when something like that is happening, the person is usually experiencing some type of unmet need. And so when we think about our needs in a day, you know, we have physical needs. And physical needs could be, I'm in pain, I'm hungry, I'm cold. It could be all of those things. There could be environmental as another need to consider. Is it loud? Is it too bright? Is it crowded wherever you're at? Emotionally, how is the person feeling? Are they sad? Are they depressed? Are they anxious? So when you think about violent behavior, it's usually the person's very frustrated with something, obviously, and they're struggling with telling you what it is, so they're showing you. And a lot of times we have to kind of be detectives and figure out what is it that is making this person so very, very upset, and what can I do to make this better? So I think one of the things to consider is that we have to, you know, realize what's happening in the environment. And a lot of times what I see when it's violent, it's usually during some personal care type of activities, and I go right to a shower or a bath. That water on somebody's head, the person with Alzheimer's does not remember that that's how a shower works, and that this is to help them get clean. And there might be cold, they might be afraid because they don't know what's happening. And so again, we just have to figure out what is the unmet need of the person, or how are they feeling, and how can we support them and hopefully minimize this type of reaction.
That is absolutely some great advice, and I love that. We hear that all the time with bathing and with personal care. It can be a very frightening experience for somebody who doesn't realize what's happening. One of the pieces of advice, Molly, that you give in your book, Confidence to Care, that I love is, if it's not dangerous, give them what they want, right? If your client or your loved one is upset, you know, because the TV channel was changed, or you know, something that isn't going to harm them, then apologize and give in, diffuse the situation.
Diffuse it right away. Yep, that's exactly right. A lot of times people, you know, we try to correct people, or we try to, well, you asked me to change the channel. Well, yeah, they probably did, but they don't remember that they asked you to change it even. So just go with it. It's just sort of one of those, sometimes you just have to go with it. And sometimes even, like you said, Kat, you have to apologize even though you didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
But as you apologize, you're sort of diffusing the situation already. You're taking the the feeling that the person did something wrong. You're taking that off of them and you're putting it on you. And I think that's always the hardest thing. One of the hardest things being a caregiver, in my opinion, is that you really have to change and be okay with things. And meaning you have to be okay that you're going to take the blame for something you didn't do. Now, how many times in our lives do we really want to do that? We don't. We always want to be right, and we always want to say, I didn't do it, you know. But so this is one of those times where we just have to kind of let that go and be okay with being wrong, because we know we're making the person, you know, we're keeping everything calm and we're keeping all the focus off of them saying or doing something wrong.
Yep. I always say, take a breath, smile, and remember the words, just keep the peace.
Just keep the peace. That's a great advice, because that's so true. That's so very, very true. And a lot of things, the other thing about caregivers that I've learned, and I've learned myself in my experience, sometimes what's happening is like I have a person who asks me the same question over and over again. And I say to myself, I can't handle this one more second. But really, that's just on me. It's frustrating for me. But is it harming the person? No. Are they, you know, in danger? No. It's just annoying for me. So I just have to figure out a way to keep redirecting the conversation. Or if they keep asking me the same question over and over again, like when's dinner? Well, they might be hungry, so I better go. Maybe I'll get a snack. That will diffuse the situation, so to speak. So again, we have to always keep in mind, is this hurting the person, like you said, Kat, or is this just really hard? And I'm not saying that we as caregivers need to just, you know, it's a really hard for us to, you know, be frustrated all the time. But sometimes in these kind of situations, we do just have to go with it and be okay with it.
Absolutely. Now, Molly, we do take questions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at our email. And we have an email here from Mike. And if any of you listening are up in the middle of the night or you just have a question, we read all of them. We try our best to respond to them. And sometimes they get included in live chats, like this one from Mike. So it's live chat at homeinstead.com. Okay, Mike says, my wife has just been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. The doctor told us that she was in the early stages and not really showing symptoms too much yet. My question is, what do I do now? How can I be prepared for what is to come?
Wow, Mike, that's a great question. And boy, I really applaud that you're trying to proactively think about what to do to get prepared. And it's interesting because when I talk to family caregivers who are coping with Alzheimer's disease, I hear over and over and over and over again that, boy, I wish I would have planned ahead. I wish I would have been more prepared. And when they tell me about planning, they're talking about getting everything, affairs in order, financially, legally. And it's one of the, they don't do that soon enough. And by the time the disease is in the full-blown middle stages with lots of symptoms, it's really, really hard to get some of those financial things and paperwork signed and to really get the person who has Alzheimer's to understand all of that and to make all that happen. So we have a great resource called the Aging Plan, and it's all around what we call the 40-70 rule, which really doesn't really apply in this situation, but the 40-70 rule is when we really encourage people to start talking to their family. So if you're 40 and your parent is 70, it's time to start having some serious conversations about planning. And same when you're 70, you should start talking to your 40-year-old children about your plans for the future. But we've developed an aging plan, and in the aging plan that we can give you the resources to go download this aging plan, we really cover all of the really important topics. And so when I think about Mike and the situation he's in, I really would go right to some information about understanding information about finances, understanding, is the paperwork signed for Mike, for, for the husband to be the, power of attorney for financial and health care? Is that signed for his wife, so to speak? Is the will clearly defined? So we know moving forward with Alzheimer's disease, there can be complications in the very end, and how far do you want to take measures? If your wife was the one who did the finances, there's a great checklist in the aging plan that talks about, here's our banker's phone number, here's the password, or here's the account numbers, here's where the mortgage document, all of those types of things. I know, Kat, I know you've heard this from families as well. They say all the time, I wish I would have gotten a lot of those affairs in order a lot quicker when I just received that diagnosis.
Yep, absolutely. And, looking at, the first thing I would say is, Mike, you have to be feeling so incredibly overwhelmed at this point. But just like Molly, I completely applaud you for looking at this and saying, what do we do? Because there may come a point where maybe she does need, more extensive help, and finances may be a concern. So like Molly said, that aging plan can really help walk you through that. For those of you listening, you can find the aging plan at 4070talk.com, and we'll make sure we include that resource in the email we send you. But I really encourage you to talk to a financial advisor.
Yes.
To see, what do we need to, is there something we need to do with how our finances are arranged and whose name is on what, and all of that stuff.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
And Mike, while you're at it, you need to fill out that aging plan for yourself, not just your wife.
Absolutely. That's an important point, Kat. Because, Mike,
now,
you might need help in the future as well, and if you have children or family, they're going to need to know what you want for your plan as well.
Absolutely. Now, I want to ask a favor of everybody who is on the chat today. Many of you are probably, or maybe a little further in the process of caring for somebody with Alzheimer's or another dementia. If you have any tips for Mike, go ahead and put them in to the question window there, and we'll share them throughout, because you guys, are dealing with this all day, every day, and we know you guys are some great experts in the boots on the ground. If you are joining us late, I'm Kat Kaler, the social media advocate for Home Instead Senior Care, and this is our monthly live Alzheimer's chat. Joining me today is Molly Carpenter. She is the author of Confidence to Care, a resource for family caregivers providing Alzheimer's disease and other dementias care at home. On top of that, Molly's been a family caregiver, a trainer, a speaker, and really just a great gal. So we are going to we're going to take some more questions. And I have a question here from Deborah, and she is joining us on the chat today. Thank you, Deborah. And here's what she has to say. A friend of mine had major problems getting a referral to a neurologist from her mom's GP and the nursing home doctor for evaluation of dementia symptoms and behaviors. It was an accidental conversation with the nurse at the facility that finally got her the referral this week. What can you do to get referrals when doctors won't give them because of fear of medical reimbursement?
Wow, that's a great question, Deborah. And it's interesting you say that doctors won't give them because of fear of medical reimbursement. You're right. That's probably is one of the reasons. I think some of the fear is doctors don't want to lose the patients, and sometimes it's hard for them to, enlist the help of another person, even though it's a specialist. So yeah, I commend you. I think you're right. It's really hard. And you know what, Deborah, you did the right thing. You just kept at it, and you kept kind of having. It sounds like to me you kept having the conversation. Um, One of the things that I've seen people do is starting to document what is happening during the day, and meaning it doesn't have to be a big, long, detailed list, and it maybe only needs to be a week of information, but sort of getting something in writing where it says, okay, here's Monday, here's the three things, here's what happened. At noon, this behavior happened, at 3 o'clock this happened, at 4 o'clock this happened, and here's how we handled it, or whatever's happening. And I think when you present then to the doctor, look, here's what's been happening for a week, here are the notes I've taken, please help me get, I need another referral, or you need to address all of these things that have happened. And so I hate to say this because I don't want to overgeneralize, but sometimes, you know, when there's behavioral things happening, doctors, you know, I don't know what they're thinking. So I don't even want to say what I think they're thinking because I don't know. It's not fair for me to say anything, but it's hard to walk away from detailed notes or a notes from a week of information. It's hard to walk away from something that's right in front of you that this is exactly what happened. So I think that might be helpful. I also think I sometimes maybe going around the doctor and talking to the nurse or his staff, the nursing staff or the head nurse, and getting some more information and trying to get through and say, listen, this is what is happening. I need you to help me talk to the doctor and get this through. I've found nurses to be very, very helpful. That might be another way. The other thing is, I think, I don't know about your community, but, you know, I kind of know from my, you know, when you're in a health system and you're with a health group, you kind of know, you know, you can do some research on your own to find doctors that are in the same kind of hospital system, so to speak. And I have no qualms, and I've done this before. I've called the specialist myself and said, I think I need to see you, and here's what's happening. And they'll say, well, we need a referral. And I ask them on their end, well, can you get it? Can you please call the doctor? And that's another reason why it's good to have a set of notes. You can say, I've been documenting what's been happening for the last week, and here's some of the things. I think I really need to see you. Again, that signals to the specialty clinic, whoa, there is something here. We do need to see this person, and they might make the call for you. So I know that's it's an interesting way to go around it, and sometimes our medical field, you know, there are a few glitches in the systems, and this could be one of those. But I just think not letting up, Deborah, like you did, was the key in this matter, and I think that's a great advice for families and caregivers. You guys are the advocates. You are the ones that have to keep speaking up. You're the ones living it day in day. So I applaud you for going the distance and getting that referral actually done in the end.
Absolutely. You know, Molly, I had my grandmother, I'm pretty sure her doctor may have been older than her. And when at one of her appointments, when I brought up the fact that she was hearing things and seeing things, he told me, that's called getting old, and there is no pill for that.
Oh, boy.
So that's when we decided, okay, well, maybe there's another option. And we decided to find a gerontologist and really look at somebody who specialized in the aging process and ailments that can accompany that, and was much better. But you are so right, Molly. As you know, my experience with my grandmother, I have a special needs daughter. It's all about, you know, I'll often say I've got to bring out my mama bear claws. And, you know, it helps to start very sweet and understanding, and, you know, we're team members in this, but, you know, there may come a time where they need to know you're serious and you are going to do what you have to do to get care for your loved one. And so there may be times that you have to take a sterner voice. You may, have to say, I'm going to have to go talk to somebody else about this because I don't think this is the right course. And like Molly said, you are their advocate. You are their voice, and you are the one fighting to make sure they get the care they need. So keep at it, and I mean, kudos to all of you. It is not an easy job by any stretch of the imagination.
No, it is not.
Molly, we have got a couple of tips that came in for Mike, and we're going to go over those, and then we are going to take questions from Jean and Carol, so hang on. So if you remember, Mike's wife was recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's. She still isn't showing symptoms quite yet, and he was asking what to do. And so some tips that came in, Deborah said, Mike, join a caregiver support group and try to find an early onset dementia group for your wife as well, ASAP. Thank you. And then we have, this one came in from Cheryl. Cheryl says, hi, Kat and Molly. Thank you for this important webinar and the great advice. I would suggest for Mike to keep his wife engaged and socialized. Have her continue with all of her, daily living tasks in order to feel purpose. It looks like Cheryl will go into seniors' home and work with the person living with dementia by providing recreational activities. If they do not work any longer, she may create a job that person likes to do and have the senior or the person with dementia feel a purpose, that quality of life, which is great advice.
Really good advice.
We all need to feel, we get in those funks sometimes where we feel like, what is my purpose? What is, gosh, I'm just day to day banging my head against the wall. We all need that sense of purpose, and that doesn't stop even when you have a, diagnosis of Alzheimer's. So,
absolutely. That is an excellent point. Thanks for who wrote that in. That is a really good tip.
Thank you, Cheryl. Okay, I promised that we would get to Jean's question next, Molly.
Okay.
So here it is from Jean. And Jean, thank you so much for joining us today. Jean wants to know, what if your family doesn't want to accept your disease, or basically they're in denial about the condition?
Oh, Jean, that's it's a really good question. I'm so sorry that that's happening. And that's so, so hard. And I've seen it a lot. And you've seen it with other diseases too, I bet, in your life. But sometimes, and it's just so hard for families to accept, or your loved ones to accept. And you think about how people, they'll justify, like, oh, well, you're just forgetful because you're tired today. Or,
right.
And they come up with all these kind of, reasons. So, again, I think this is one of those, because it's a hard concept and a hard disease. It's really, I think it takes a little bit longer for most families to kind of accept this. So I think I hate to say this is normal, but it's normal to have some denial when it comes to this type of disease. Unfortunately, there's the ways to convince a family. A lot of times it just takes time. It takes time for them to see. It takes time for them to understand and sort of process what's happening and what's coming. I think it also depends. I've seen families sometimes get the doctor involved, and so at the next appointment, everybody goes to the doctor, and the doctor tells them that this is what's happening, and yes, it's confirmed, and this is what we need you to do now to move forward. Sometimes that ends up working a little bit because they're hearing it from a outside person and a professional who is qualified to make those kind of decisions.
Yes,
Yeah, Kat, go
that
ahead.
is tough. I love that bit of advice. I call that the come to Jesus talk.
Yes.
Like we need to have this serious conversation about what is going on, and you're going to leave understanding.
Yes.
Obviously there are plans that you need to put in place, and you can't force your family to be part of your care, to be part of that planning. We hope they will be, but quite honestly, you maybe need to plan for the fact that they won't be. And it's kind of that, hope for the best, prepare for the worst,
Yes.
which is terrible to think about, but I don't want you, Jean, in the position of waiting for people to come around, and then you're in a position where, man, I didn't do any planning because I've been waiting for them to be, by my side.
Right. And the other thing I would say, Kat, is when families are in denial, I think it would be, a good idea to get to the heart of that. So are they in denial because they just don't want to accept it because they love you and they don't want to see this happen to you? Or do they want more testing done? Would that help them? A lot of times people need a couple of other, some people need a couple of other proof, a little bit more proof of something. So let's say you got an assessment done and they did a cognitive assessment, and just from that they've given a diagnosis. Well, would a CAT scan help, or some, is there another not a very invasive test that might help a family feel a little bit better or really understand that this really is what it is? The hardest thing about Alzheimer's is you cannot absolutely 100% confirm a diagnosis unless you do an autopsy of the brain eventually. So sometimes it's hard, or maybe it's a second opinion. Maybe it's not another test, but it's a second opinion. If that would be easier and quicker to obtain. And sometimes that can ease a family's mind, like, okay. But again, you've got to get to the root of the issue, Jean, and understand why they are in denial. What is the... And the other thing is I would say this, I've seen this before, is sometimes a family denial, you might be taking it as denial, but they might just be so, just so unprepared, and they don't even know how to handle it. They're scared almost, and they don't even know how to have a conversation anymore. They're very nervous about things, and so maybe they don't bring it up, or they're not doing anything differently that they did in the past, and you're assuming that that's denial, so to speak, when really sometimes they just don't even know what to do. So, Jean, I would be as upfront and honest as possible that you can with your family about what you need and what you want and what you're looking for them. That might help just ease and open up the communication and sort of ease this pain that they might be feeling.
I love it. Plan that family outing to your next doctor appointment.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay, we are chatting today with caregiver advocate and author of Confidence to Care, Molly Carpenter. We're talking about the importance of early detection, and we are taking your questions. Molly, I want to go back to discussing the importance of early detection and why that is so key. We've heard from Mike, who's kind of in the beginning stages of this process, and we talked about, being able to really put together your care team and be a part of the decision making. What do you say to somebody who is, because we hear it all the time, I don't want to know that I have it if I do, and I think if I look at my husband and most of my friends who are men, that's a very guy thing of, look, if it's there, it's there, but if I don't know about it, I kind of don't have to deal with it. Talk about a little bit about why that detection is so important beyond just that care team. For the individual, what does that mean to me as the individual?
As the individual who may have it.
Right.
Well, I think a couple of things is, you know, call it a blessing or not, you can look at it in a positive light and think, okay, I guess I kind of know what's going to happen to me now, or I know that there could be some complications in the future and I won't remember things. So you've been given a gift to really um, like I said, put your affairs in orders, but also have important conversations, go on that trip you wanted to go on, kind of do the things that, and keep doing the things that you're still doing, and really um, try to figure out in the future, how do you want this, how do you want your care to go? How do you want to, how do you want to age with Alzheimer's disease? How do you want the next 10 years to go, for example? There's a lot of movement out in this industry with people that actually have Alzheimer's and dementia are getting more involved in this advocacy about the disease and needing research, but
Yep.
they're getting a lot involved in being voices about what they want, what they want their care to be, and how they want to age. So, for example, I met a lady at a conference who had Alzheimer's disease, and she was advocating for this dementia alliance for voices for people with Alzheimer's. And she said to me, I know that I enjoy going for a walk every day, and I'm very active, and so I want to stay active. I know that will still bring me joy, even if I don't remember. I want to be in the outdoors. I want to go for a walk every day. So that was one thing. The other thing she said was, if I'm in a care facility someday, please, that's okay if I go in a care facility, but there's a couple of deal breakers, like I want to be around the family at Christmas. So if as much as you can, please bring me to Christmas still. I may not remember who you are, but I'll feel your love, So it's those kind of things that you can put into place, so in the future you are still living the life that you want to live, and you're still getting to do the things, and you still have control to dictate what you want to do as you're aging and how you want to live out your days.
I love it. That's great. And that looks so different for all of us.
It does.
And quite honestly, it doesn't matter how many times you have the conversation with your loved one and you say, this is what I want done. You have to put it on paper. It has to be there, and your family has to know where this document lives.
Yes, absolutely.
So, okay, and again, if you want more information on the importance of early detection, how to request a cognitive impairment assessment, we have that information on helpforalzheimersfamilies.com, and we will make sure we put a link to that in the follow-up email that we send you. Okay, Miss Molly, we have got a few more questions here I want to get to.
Okay.
We have an interesting one here from Carol, who's joining us on the chat today. And quite honestly, I don't know that I have ever heard this question, so I'm glad I've got you. She says, is it possible for someone who has Alzheimer's and who is a recovering alcoholic to think that they are at that point back in time where they drank and are now demanding alcohol again?
Well, Carol, what I would say is that there's no absolutely yes, that's going to happen kind of rule when it comes to Alzheimer's. I always say you see one case, you've seen one case. They're all different. Everything's different. I will tell you, Carol, though, that I've seen that happen. I have done a lot of work in facilities, and it's not a demanding of alcohol, but they see, like there was the facility I was at, we had a happy hour every Friday, from 3 to 4 before dinner. And a gentleman there was an alcoholic, hadn't drank in 30 years or something like that. Maybe it was 20. I don't quite remember. But and it was happy hour, and everybody knows what happy hour is. And he said, "Yeah, I'll take a whatever." But we knew that he was an alcoholic, and we knew that this was probably not a good idea because of what happens with alcoholism. So we had non-alcoholic beer, sparkling wine, and those types of things available to give him. So and he didn't ever know. He didn't say, like, this isn't the real stuff. So I have seen that happen before. So I wouldn't say no, that isn't going to happen. I think it probably could. I don't think it's a good idea to still give the alcohol, but I do think that's a conversation with the doctor. And in fact, like, because it was a facility, we have to always get permission if the person can have alcohol or not. And the doctor is the one who usually weighs in on that conversation. And so it's a great question for the doctor to just, confirm, yeah, that's a real bad idea, or you know what, one drink a day isn't going to do anything, so go for it. So, but because I can't make that decision or give any medical advice like that since I'm not a doctor, but I've seen it happen, Carol, so that may occur. And so just be prepared for it. So have the conversation now with the doctor, get ahead of it, and figure out, have some things on hand if that is going to happen. The non-alcoholic items that I mentioned, they're actually really good. I've tasted a few of them obviously in my day, and they're very, very, they're not bad at all. So I hope that helps, Carol.
Molly, this reminded me of a message that we received on our Facebook page early this week, and it was something that was kind of shocking, but really, really made sense, and it really made me kind of sad. The gentleman's father had Alzheimer's, and his father was a war veteran. Never ever talked about the war. But now that he has Alzheimer's, is constantly reliving those moments. And they're not good moments.
Wow.
So, it's those things that, we always say, oh, we want them to remember. And he's like, well, what if you don't want them to remember what they're remembering?
Oh, that's hard.
Yeah, so I was just like, oh, it was heartbreaking. And, I was like, redirect, change the subject, and just be there.
Absolutely. Yep. Oh, that's tough.
Oh, yeah.
So you're right. Alcohol it could be a similar thing. You don't want them to remember that they used to love it, and that they drank it all the time and there was no problem, because they might forget the problem part of it. But the other thing with alcohol too is it's not good for your memory in general anyway. So it can help. It can cause some memory problems. So if this person has Alzheimer's disease, it's probably going to make the symptoms worse. I again can't say that for sure, but we know that alcoholics do have memory trouble in general. It's a known fact about alcohol and what it does to your brain. So yeah, that's something else to consider, Carol, when you're working through this one.
Okay, let's go. A great practical question that came in from Kay, and these are the ones that I think as caregivers we're always looking for those everyday practical tips. Kay wants to know, and Kay, thank you for joining us today. She is on live with us. How do you keep your loved one engaged when they have lost their ability to do many things?
Okay, that is such a great question. I'm so glad you're thinking that way, because a lot of times people give up on a person with Alzheimer's because they can't do what they used to do, or they don't remember, or they can't have a decent conversation, or whatever the deal is. So I appreciate that you're already asking that question. And I think that the answer is that you've got to look at it as a way of, obviously, Kay, I'm going to guess that you're probably know the person pretty well and have a pretty good relationship. so I always think about it from, what do I know about this person? What did they used to love and what did they used to do? And again, even if they're not an active participant, I take my favorite example of one of my favorite people that I cared for. Her name was Winnie, and she made amazing lemon bread, and she could not stir, she could not barely crack an egg. She couldn't do anything. She had such advanced Alzheimer's. But I will tell you what, the second she could smell the lemon cake mix that went into this, her face lit up. And the second that the bread was baking and she smelled the smells, she just knew that this was going to be a really good treat coming any minute, you know. And so it's just a matter of still trying to engage them in everything that they used to love and do. It's just being realistic about participation. But I will say this, you'd be surprised about how engaged people can still be. So I had an example one time with a resident, another baking situation, where I said, why don't you crack the eggs? And the resident looked at me like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So I cracked the first egg. And once I cracked the first egg, she took the second egg and cracked the next 3. So sometimes it's even demonstrating, starting whatever the activity or whatever you're doing. You start it a little bit and try to get their engagement that way. A lot of times it's even just engaging in the conversation as you're doing different things. So I think it's, Kat, I know you've heard lots of great stories about this too, if you've got more to add in on this topic.
Yeah, I think Molly, you're absolutely right. It's, you know, maybe it's not doing the things the same way that she's always done them.
That's a great way to say it.
But finding a different way. And maybe she's not doing anything at all, but she's there with you while you're cooking in the room. And you're able to have a conversation, or you're able to, if she can't have a conversation, you're at least able to talk to her and let her know what you're doing. And, you know, I'm browning the meat, or now I'm peeling the carrots. And, oh, remember when we used to go and pick the carrots? And
yes,
it doesn't have to be physical. Just include her.
Absolutely. That's absolutely right. And it's all about creativity, and it's all about, I know it's hard when we don't see them doing what they used to do, but just being involved, being around, feeling the feelings, listening to conversation, you know, being by loved ones, all of those things matter so much still. Just think about it this way. A person with Alzheimer's disease has to rely a lot on their feelings because their brain isn't functioning properly. So how they feel at that moment. So even if you're just watching a TV show and you giggle with the person, or you say, you know, Mom, wasn't that funny? Or Mom, remember when we used to watch this? That feeling of family and we're together, and that goes such a long way. I know it's not, Mom didn't do the chores today because she can't, but she still is having a good day because she's still connected, she's smiling, she feels your love, and that's really what matters when it comes as the disease progresses, is how they are feeling.
Absolutely. And Molly, before we get to another one, we're probably going to have time for one more question, but I do want to make sure everybody is aware of some of the resources we discussed, and I want to give everybody a sneak peek for next month as well. So we've talked about a few resources in this chat, and one of those is helpforalzheimersfamilies.com. If you have questions about Alzheimer's, whether it's I'm a professional caregiver and I maybe want a little more training, I'm a family caregiver and I want some more training. Perhaps you have a local business and you want your business to know how to help those customers and their caregivers. We now have a training especially for local businesses, how to train their staff to be Alzheimer's friendly. I also encourage you to visit confidencetocare.com. You can buy Confidence to Care on Amazon and anywhere great books are sold. Molly did a wonderful job on this book, and the reason it's really kind of become that handbook in the Alzheimer's world is it's broken down by behavioral symptom. So you don't have to sit down and read this whole book cover to cover to feel like you know what you're doing. If one day you are struggling with hostility, you can just flip it open to that section, get some great tips, and maybe another time you're struggling with, sleeping or bedtime struggles, you can flip to that section. So confidencetocare.com. And we also talked about our Facebook page, and I really, really hope you'll join us there if you haven't already. It is facebook.com/Remember for Alzheimer's. And of course, next month is November already. So here in the U.S., we will be getting ready for Thanksgiving. I know our friends up in Canada already enjoyed their Thanksgiving, but I will be inviting Karen Garner to join us for our chat in November. You can already go to our helpforalzheimersfamilies.com website and register. We are going to be talking with Karen on November 17th at 5 p.m., and we're going to be discussing coping, surviving, and, if possible, even thriving as a family caregiver. And if anybody knows what it feels like to be in the weeds as a family caregiver to somebody with Alzheimer's, it is Karen. So please mark that on your calendars. Go register. We will see you then. And we've got a couple of minutes, Molly, so I want to get to one last question, if we could. The question here comes from Melody, who has joined us on our live chat today. Thank you so much, Melody. She wants to know, in keeping with our theme today on the importance of early detection, what is the most common symptom in detecting Alzheimer's or another dementia?
Well, that's a great question, and I really love where this, what was the name, Kat? I'm sorry.
This is from Melody.
Melody, yes. Okay, Melody. Thanks, Melody, for writing in. I would say that probably the most common symptom is memory loss that disrupts daily life. And I know that's pretty broad, and it's like, well, okay, the person's, a little forgetful, so that's hard. But I would say that's the most common. I would say, though, when you think about memory loss that disrupts daily life, I always use this analogy because it's really important, because people start to get real nervous when you say, kind of general statements, and they say, so like, let's say you go in and you walk into a room and you're looking for your car keys or something, right? And you can't find them, you've misplaced them. Or let's say you walk in a room and you can't remember why you went into the room. But like in the situation with the car keys, it's one thing to not be able to find the car keys, or you don't remember where you left them, last time you used them. If you can't remember what this object that we would all say are car keys, if you can't remember what that object is for, that's when it's cause for concern. So it's not, you've got to think about when we say broad things like memory loss that disrupts daily life, and right. I think another big one or common one is about confusion with time and place. I also think judgment and mood changes. Those are some of the, symptoms that I would be looking out for. There's, again, the Alzheimer's Association does a fabulous job with the 10 signs, and they're kind of everywhere. They're even all over the Home Instead resources as well. They're just these well-known 10 signs where people, when you read this list, that I just covered a few of them, can really help you. But as far as the most common, I would definitely say it was the memory loss or confusion with time and place.
Yeah. And bottom line, if you're worried or your family or friends are worried, go see your doctor.
Yes. Yes.
Molly,
absolutely.
that is our hour for today. That is going to wrap up our chat. I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us and discuss the importance of early detection and answer some of these great questions from the caregivers. And I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to join us to share your tips, and we will